Hey Brian, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Stacey. Thanks for connecting.
Same. Well, I'm sure a lot of people know you already, but I'm just gonna, for sake of getting things going, do a brief intro. Brian, as I know Brian's the president and CEO of the PLRB, and he's committed to the insurance industry's promise to protect people and help them put their lives back together after what is often one of the hardest moments in their life. Brian is also an advisor to the insurance industry and a former C-level P&C insurance and insurtech executive with deep functional expertise in general management, sales and distribution, operations, claims, corporate strategy, business intelligence, and more. Brian is also a best-selling author. He's an executive coach, a TEDx presenter, and a public speaker with articles written for Inc. magazine, the LA Times, and the Chicago Tribune. So, Brian, thank you for the positive influence you've had on our industry and for supporting so many people in our community. You're a role model that so many of us admire, and I'm proud to know you. So, thanks for being with me here today as we interview insurance influencers who've made a big difference in our industry. And to get things started, I'd like to ask if you could change one thing about insurance, whether it's technology, process, or anything, what would it be?
It's a really good question, and I think a lot of people don't like my answer because it's not super prescriptive. There's no like one technology or process or functional area that I say, we must change it in this way, because I think actually anything we do in that regard is almost going to be a waste if we don't change the bigger picture, which is our mentality. And as an industry, I think we tend to lean on this notion of we've always done it this way or we've never done it that way if it's been doing something a different way. And we take that as gospel, or at least maybe subconsciously, we take that as such a strong source of discomfort around change that we don't do it. And so we almost treat it like a business requirement, but it's not. It's a business constraint. It's the single biggest business constraint that we face. So that's what I would change, is that mentality that actually if you like have that inclination to say, well, wait, but we've never done it this way, take that as like a little sign that that's exactly what you should be addressing. If you've never done something differently or you've never done it the way that's being proposed, it doesn't mean that's the right answer, but it does mean you're probably on the right path around, focusing on where you should put your efforts.
So, with that said, it probably doesn't mean that everything needs to change either, right? So, what is something that you think we should keep doing? What could we keep the same?
Yeah, I mean, you said it in your intro about me, is like I'm very mission driven, and I think insurance, as much as it's like fashionable to make fun of insurance or say it's not cool, if you really stop and think, the mission and purpose behind the industry is so profound. That's what we should never lose sight of. And it's not to change it, but it's almost to like re-engage in it or remind ourselves of that, because it's very easy to get caught up in sort of the day to day and the minutia and maybe aspects of it that are process heavy or boring or whatever. Really stop and remind yourself just how critical this space is, and I think that fuels a lot of the energy that we need. And yeah, we're here to put people's lives back together. And I think that's the front and center purpose that people focus on, and that matters. But if you step back and think about how critical insurance is, it's not just about solving problems once they happen. It's about taking the risk of those terrible outcomes off the table so people can live their life, buy their home, start their business, run their business, ship their freight, like whatever it is that we need to do every day. None of that happens without insurance behind it. And when you really stop and think about the enablement of literally everything in the world, directly or indirectly, that becomes really profound. That becomes really powerful. And we have the ability as insurance providers and the ecosystem around insurers to literally like fuel every action that goes on in the world. That's what I think we need to keep our eyes on. It's not just about putting things back together, those rare times that something goes bad. It's about the literal enablement of the entire global economy and just people living their lives every day. And I think that's a really important thing to remind ourselves of.
Yeah, I mean, insurance definitely is. It's the thing that helps the world go, right? It allows us to take risks in ways that we normally wouldn't. But what would you say is something that you love most about the insurance industry?
Well, I mean, I think for all of us who have heard the adage, like it's a relationship business and it's a small world, a really small world in insurance. That's actually what I love about it is I found this to be an incredibly supportive community. And I think almost heightened by COVID because it forced us all to find other ways to reach out. And it also, in an interesting way, lowered the barriers to people connecting because you can hop on a Zoom pretty easily or Teams or, whatever you use, versus like having to fly out somewhere or drive a really long time and make time in your schedule for all that. Like, I think we've all seen, or many of us have seen, an increase in the sense of community and support within the insurance world. And, I think that that's a beautiful thing about the industry. It can be used in the wrong way where, if you're not in the club, you can't get in. And there's some of that. It's a bit of human nature in different places. But I think what we need to do is use this sense of the supportive community where, everyone's connected to everyone in this industry. It really does seem. What if we could use that to support each other, to bring new people in, to hold them up as they're getting up and going? We've got a talent shortage and we will have even more of one as time goes on in this industry. So that sense of community and the support that comes from it, that's going to be a critical factor, I think, for all of us to bring in new talent, to grow it, to foster it, and to develop the people that we have. So this like tight-knit community of insurance folks, that's the thing that I've certainly benefited the most from is just how much we all kind of connect with each other and stand by each other.
It is a pretty amazing thing. Just thinking about it from my own perspective, I spent a lot of years inside the four walls of an organization, never really looking out until the day came when I started looking out, and I saw exactly what you're describing, this huge, large but small, highly interconnected community of people, and it's really an industry that's all about people. And you talk about the talent shortages and things of that sort. And so here's a meatball of a loaded question for you specifically, right? And thinking about where we are in early first half of 2023, where do you see the future of insurance going?
Yeah. So I have to warn people, this is going to call up some buzzwords. So apologies ahead of time. But I do think a lot of the things that we throw around right now, they're not fully mature yet, or maybe the opportunities and how to use them hasn't really materialized yet. But I see a world where insurance right now is something you do in addition to what you actually do. Like you buy a car and you get it insured. You run your business and you get protection for the various aspects of that business. They're separate things, and that creates friction. No one wants to go buy insurance. It makes the cost of it much more explicit, and it separates it from the thing it actually protects. And if we got back to connecting it into what's being protected, whether it's a thing or a process or a relationship or whatever, an experience, that changes your sense of the value of that insurance, and it changes your relationship to it because it's not as explicitly separated out. So to me, I think the future is one that's much more integrated. And yeah, that is going to take technologies like IoT, embedded insurance. I think actually blockchain, we're not there yet, but blockchain I think could be a huge unlock because it allows information to flow instantly and automatically in a safe way. So what if that enabled, a lot of these kind of coming together of disparate experiences and the need to cover them? I think insurance has to naturally happen as we work and live. And that's where I think the future will end up. Not 100% of all coverage and all things, but I think we're going to start to see more and more of this. And it's probably, I think, at least a decade out. I'm not as bullish on like 2 years from now, we're all going to be, in these flying pods that's shared and like no one will buy a car. Like, I don't think that kind of thing's going to happen. But I do think slowly but surely insurance is going to start to evolve into being less explicit and more interconnected.
Well, thank you for not using ChatGPT in your answer.
Oh, I missed one.
Well, if you think about, the career that you've had, and what do you think is one of the greatest pieces of advice you've ever received?
I don't know if this counts explicitly as advice, but it's a value I got at a company I worked at. I was a management consultant at McKinsey, and this is one of their core values. And I have used this with every single team that I've run and every organization. And I think it's critical. And the value is the obligation to dissent. And I mean, this goes right back to my point about like, we've never done it this way, or we've always done it this way, and needing to change that. The word choice is really important here. It's not the right to dissent or to disagree or to speak up. It's the obligation. And this has been kind of transformative for me in my career and with the teams that I've been lucky enough to run or be a part of. If you know differently, or you at least don't agree, like maybe you don't get it, what everyone else is talking about, you're just not on the same page, you have to say something. And that provides challenge, that provides a source of new opportunity and new ideas. But also, even if what you think it is isn't the right answer, or maybe you don't know what it is, you just don't get what everyone else is talking about, what that means is the team is disconnected. Not everyone is as bought in as they could be. So we're either missing a better answer, or we're at least not going to get as good an answer as we would, or as good an execution, because we didn't have everyone fully there. So having the right to stop and say something is unbelievably critical in my mind to moving us all forward. And that's how we start to break out of these patterns of like, well, you know, I need a button that I can click here that sends an email to this person who will then click a button to like, because that's the way we've always done it, because this person has to send it out. Well, why are we thinking that way? What if we didn't have all these things? What if we didn't ask the insured all these questions that they don't know the answer to? Do we even need that information? I mean, these are all points of challenge that could only come if someone spoke up. So I think that's the most valuable thing that I've ever gotten in my career, is that value. And then I've handed that around everywhere that I've gone. And look, it's not always easy, and people don't always feel safe speaking up. And that's why it has to be an obligation, because if we all know that we're obligated to do that, we have to respect it when someone else is doing it. That's been just like mission critical for me. I don't want to operate knowing that people aren't willing to say what they actually think.
You know, and somewhere in that is something to be said about diversity and inclusion, I think, in the way it helps to contribute to that as well.
Yeah. But it needs to be safe for all of those different voices and backgrounds and perspectives to come to the table and be a part of it. Otherwise, you know, you're ticking boxes by saying, well, look at our stats of how we're made up. It's like, yeah, but those people aren't empowered. They don't have a right. And that's really problematic.
Yeah, that inclusion part. Well, yeah. Bryan, it's really an honor to be part of this industry with you, and I'm grateful for all the support that you've given InsurTech Hartford over the years, and I look forward to honoring you at the InsurTech Hartford Symposium on May 2nd. And until then, keep making waves in our industry and helping to drive innovation forward.
Thank you so much, Stacey. I'm looking forward to the event.
Great.